And the next one we will discuss about sedimentation, decantation and filtration. Okay. Next we are going to discuss about sedimentation, decantation and filtration. I think the last year in our class we have done this process by doing an activity. You have done that. Do you remember that? All of you have mixed mud along with the water and you brought to class in a plastic container. Do you remember that? The same process now I have to remind you once again. In the process of sedimentation, what we need to do is, there is an activity mentioned for you. We need to collect some muddy water, okay, or if not, you can collect some clear water. Into that you can just add a handful of soil into it, okay. After adding a handful of soil into it, you just stir the mixture thoroughly, okay. After stirring the mixture thoroughly, you just keep it aside for some time. When you keep a mixture of water and soil, after stirring it aside for some time, you can observe it at that slowly the dirt particles or the soil particles keeps coming down. Okay, that starts settling down, you will be able to observe. After half an hour or after 1 hour when you observe, you can see the bottom of the beaker where we have poured, where we have added the soil, that soil particles all comes down and settle down at the bottom of the beaker. Okay, and this process of settling down of heavier particles in a mixture, when we add water to it, okay, when we add water to a mixture, the heavier particles present in the mixture keep settling down at the bottom of the beaker. And this process of settling down of heavier particles in a beaker, that process is known as sedimentation, we will say. What is that called? Sedimentation. S-E-D-I-M-E-N-T-A-T-I-O-N. Sedimentation. Sedimentation is a process of settling down the heavier particles when we add water to it. And that particles which is settled down at the bottom of the beaker, we can call it as sediment. What is that? Sediment. So while we are washing rice, okay, before cooking, your mother used to wash the rice. So while we are washing the rice before cooking, we can observe first time when we pour water into it, what you can observe, the color of the water which we pour will be slightly changed to somewhat muddy color, some other color you will be able to see. That means some of the dust particles which is present on the rice grains and some mud particles or some soil particles or the lightweight dust particles will be there in the rice particles. In order to separate that only we are doing washing. We are washing it. While we are washing, these light colored or these light dust particles which is settled on the surface of the rice get dissolved in water. That's why the color of the water will be changed to somewhat muddy color, somewhat slight color change will be there. And what would happen to the rice? The rice, because of it is heavier, they used to settle down, okay, at the beaker or the container where we have taken. That rice grains are of heavier, so that it is keeps settling down. Then what we will do, the next step is, after washing 1 or 2 times, we used to drain this water out, okay. In order to separate these dirt particles or dissolved dust particle, we used to drain this water outside. And this process of draining this water outside is known as decantation, we will say. What is that called? Decantation. Okay. First of all, we have poured water into the rice, then we wash it, then we are getting the light dust particles get dissolved in water, and this water which contain these impurities will be drained out into another vessel or outside somewhere we are draining it. And this process of dirty water outside or separating this water from the grain is known as decantation, we can say. Decantation process. Okay. Now we have discussed about sedimentation and decantation. Decantation means the process of removal of the dirty water from the mixture outside. Okay, the transfer of the water which is collected in the decantation, the sedimentation vessel, that we are removing that water outside, that is known as decantation. Sedimentation means settling down of heavier particles at the bottom of the vessel, that is known as sedimentation. Now we will discuss about filtration. The next process is filtration. And this process of decantation can be used in separating a mixture of oil and water. For example, I taught you in the last class, I have taught you that is immiscible liquid. Regarding immiscible liquid, we have discussed. What is immiscible liquid? Two liquids. Suppose if you allow two liquids mix well, some of the liquids will mix well with each other, whereas some other liquids may not mix well with each other. And the liquids which will not mix well with each other are known as immiscible liquid. For example, you take some amount of water in a glass tumbler and pour some kerosene oil over it. When you pour kerosene oil, after pouring kerosene oil into water, you have to shake that thoroughly. Even after continuous shaking for some time, when you leave it there for some time, you can observe the kerosene oil will get float on the surface of the water. That means it doesn't mix well with each other. Okay, so we can say they are immiscible liquid. Such immiscible liquid also we can remove. So in the glass vessel which contain water, and even after shaking, the kerosene did not dissolve in water. So kerosene automatically gets float on the surface of the water, and by the process of decantation we can remove it. Okay, we just tilt the tumbler so that the kerosene can be separated out into another vessel, okay, by means of decantation. Then filtration. Now we will come to filtration. Filtration also you are very familiar in your home. Already I have told you earlier, in order to separate tea leaves from the tea, we are using a process of filtration. Or suppose when we are making coffee or tea, you can observe, if you keep it for some time, tea powder, after mixing tea powder or coffee powder with the coffee or tea, if you leave that glass for some time without disturbance, you can observe automatically this coffee powder gets settled down. Slowly the coffee powder gets settling down at the bottom of the beaker. Or even tea powder also you can observe, it keeps settling down slowly you can observe it. But and you can drain this water out. That means after settling down or after the process of sedimentation, the clear coffee or tea which is on the top, it can be decanted into another vessel. But even then you can observe some amount of coffee powder is still remain with the coffee, you can observe. Okay, as a result of decantation, we could allow some of the sediments to settle down, but completely it will not be possible. Complete removal of this tea powder or coffee powder will not be possible by means of sedimentation. So in this case, what we can do, if we need to remove this coffee powder or tea powder completely, we may use a strainer. We can use a tea strainer, or we may use a piece of cloth. By using a piece of cloth, we can filter it, or we may use a tea strainer. Okay, by using a tea strainer or by using a cloth, we will be able to separate this coffee powder or tea powder completely from the tea or coffee. And that process of separation, these solid particles from this liquid of a mixture is known as filtration, we will say. What is that? Filtration. During filtration, what is happening? The solid component of a mixture can be separated easily from the liquid component. Example, separating tea powder by using a tea strainer or by using a cloth. Okay. Okay, now let us see another activity. It is given in page number 39 of your textbook. Okay, activity 5 in page number 39. Okay, so what is activity means? You have to collect some muddy water, or you may pour or you may add some amount of soil into a glass containing water. Okay, take a beaker containing little amount of water. Into that we have to pour some amount of soil. Then we need to stir the soil particle along with the water thoroughly. Then afterwards leave it undisturbed for some time. So when you leave it undisturbed for some time, what will happen? Automatically, already I have explained to you, all the sediment, all the heavier particles in this glass tumbler will settle down slowly. And that process also we have discussed, that is called as sedimentation. So now you can see, even after settling down, you can observe the top part of this, you will be able to see some water will be there. And this clear water you have to pour into another vessel. And this transfer of this top clear water into another vessel without disturbing the sediment is known as decantation. And afterwards what to do means, this decanted water we have to pour into another vessel, and you just observe. If that water is still muddy, you may use a cloth for filtering it. First you have to allow the water to settle down, or the particles to settle down. Afterwards, the top clear water should be transferred to another vessel. That process is known as decantation. And in this decantate means the decanted water. Okay, decanted water is known as decantate. In this decantate, if you find again some mud particles, the next step is to separate this mud particle from it. By using a piece of cloth, you can filter it. Okay, that process is known as filtration, we can say. Then afterwards, again this filtered water or this decantate again contain still some more amount of mud particles are available in that. What you should do is, you have to pour this water again into a funnel in which we have to place a filter paper cone. That means you have to collect a filter paper and keep it inside, just in the shape of a cone you have to make it, and keep it inside the funnel, and into that filter paper you have to pour this muddy water again. Okay. When we pour this muddy water into the filter paper is also having, just like fine holes you observe in cloth, very fine holes are there, very minute pores are there on the filter paper. And through these finest holes, when the water molecules pass through it, all the fine dust particles will be trapped in the filter paper, and the clear water keeps coming down. Okay, and that clear water, now we can use it for any other purpose we can use. So decanted water should be transferred through a cloth first. Again the water is having still, if you observe the presence of mud particles in the water which we have already filtered, allow it to pass through a filter paper, and which is placed inside a funnel. And when we pour this filter water or this muddy water into the filter paper, the fine holes of the filter paper, through the fine holes of the filter paper, water molecules come down because they are fine particles, whereas the dust particles will be settled on the filter paper. In this way, we can purify the muddy water completely. Okay. And this process of filtration also can be used to separate juice. Okay, while we are making juice, it contains the seeds of the juice and the pulp of that fruit, etc. will be available. In order to separate the seeds and pulp of the fruit from juice, we can use this method of filtration. And the same method can also be used, filtration can also be used in the manufacturing of, or in the preparation of paneer from milk. You know what is by paneer? How it is prepared? Paneer is prepared by adding a lemon juice into boiling milk. Okay, when the milk is boiling, during that time we must pour some amount of lemon juice into it. When we pour lemon juice into boiling milk, automatically you can find the protein content present in the milk all starts coagulating. Coagulation means what? Becoming a lump, becoming a clot. Okay, the protein content present in the milk all will come together and they forms a solid, okay, solid substance, and that is known as paneer. And in order to separate paneer from milk, also we can use a fine cloth. Okay, when we are using a cloth, by using a cloth, you can separate the paneer from the milk. Do you understand that how to prepare paneer? Into boiling milk, you have to take some amount of milk, then boil it. When the milk is boiling, we must pour some lemon juice into the boiling milk. Then automatically the milk proteins all will come together and they form a solid mass. And we have to transfer this milk along with this solid substance. Milk is in liquid form that contain water, that's why it is in liquid form. And when we pour lemon into it, the milk protein all comes together and they form a solid mass. Then transfer this liquid into a cloth, then squeeze it. Then the water content will be separated. Paneer can be collected within the cloth. Okay, so that is also a method of filtration which we are using in our daily life for the preparation of separation of paneer from the milk. We are using filtration. For the separation of tea leaves from the tea, we are using the process of filtration. And for the separation of pulp and seeds from fruit juice, we are using the process of filtration. Okay, now let us do another activity. It is given in page number 40. Okay, page number 40 of your textbook, that is activity 6. In activity 6, it is mentioned that you have to collect some amount of salt or add 2 or 3 teaspoons full of salt into a glass or beaker containing water. Okay, collect some salt and add this salt into a beaker containing water. The next step is, by using a spoon, you have to stir this salt thoroughly. Okay, after adding salt into water, you have to stir it thoroughly. Then take this salt water and keep it in the same beaker or in another container. You can pour it. Afterwards, heat it. Salt water should be heated or it should be boiled. So after some time you can find that fine steam will come out from the beaker. And once if the process is completed, you will be able to see powdered salt will remain at the bottom of the beaker. You will be able to see. And what is this process called? We have taken salt water. When we heat it, this water present in this salt water undergoes boiling and it converts into steam, or from liquid state it changes into gaseous state or gaseous form. And this process of conversion of liquid water into its vapor form is known as evaporation. Okay, so it's also a method of separating the substance. Evaporation is also a method of separating substance. Now, the same process is used for making salt in seawater by using seawater. Okay, we are using common salt which is used in our daily life. We are using in all the dishes. We need to have some amount of salt. And where this salt come from? From where this salt come from? Actually, this salt which we are using in our daily life is prepared or produced from seawater only. Okay, the seawater is allowed to settle in shallow pits nearby the sea, and it is allowed to evaporate with the help of or with the heat of sun. Okay, by the heat of sunlight, the seawater which we have already allowed to stay in shallow pits will be evaporated, undergoing a process called evaporation. As a result of evaporation, and here the energy for the evaporation process is available from the sunlight. By the heat of sunlight, the seawater will get evaporated, and as a result, the salt present in the seawater get accumulated in the shallow pit. And this salt when we are producing, it will not be in pure form. It will be mixed with some other impurities. Okay. And this impure salt again will be further purified. Then afterwards it is used for our daily activities. Okay. And this the salt contained a more amount of iodine. Once when we discussed about the first components of food, I have already told you the salt contain iodine, and if the salt is not having enough amount of iodine, what will happen? We may get a disease that is known as, if our diet does not contain enough amount of iodine in it, we may get a disease that is known as goiter, that we have already discussed. So in order to get iodine content in the salt nowadays, iodized salt is also distributed by the government, so that we can solve that deficiency disease, that is goiter. Okay, so here in this process of evaporation, the definition for evaporation is the process of conversion of liquid water into its vapor form, that is known as evaporation. From seawater we are getting salt by means of this process of evaporation only. For evaporation we need to have a source of energy. So for preparing common salt, sunlight acts as a source of energy for evaporation. Okay.